Westminster, live here at Westminster now in London for the Kill the Bill protest. So where I am currently located, where I'm standing here just outside the corner of Westminster. Earlier today at lunchtime there was a gathering here against the police bill as the Lords entered into the House of Lords to debate the amendments for the police bill today. Now, if you're watching this for the first time and you're not familiar with the police bill, this has been already been through the House of Commons. There's been various stages of debate, and there's a number of key clauses in there that seriously impacts the right to protest. So there's a series of demonstrations here today challenging this bill as the House of Lords gather to debate these amendments. So the gathering here just outside Westminster here at lunchtime was here to send a message to the Lords as they entered into the House for that debate. Firstly, in support of those who are standing up for the right to protest, those who are standing up for democracy itself, but also to send a message to the remaining Lords who perhaps are undecided on the trajectory of this bill. So there was a smaller protest earlier this afternoon, and now it's understood that there's going to be a large gathering of many different groups this evening further down here. So I'm just on my way to investigate the situation to see what's happening. And of course, this particular bill affects everyone. It affects all of our right to protest, our right to represent different causes and issues. So you'd expect here today to see a vast number of protest groups, campaign groups, human rights organizations making their voice heard. Now, what's been absolutely disappointing, I'll say, disappointing yet simultaneously pleasing, is that we've seen such a low turnout. But those who have been here have been vocal, they've been succinct in their messaging, being peaceful, making their voices heard. And you know, you have to commend those who take the time out on a weekday to come and stand up for what they believe in, and to do so. You know, it's much easier at a weekend when you're not working, but people came here during their lunch break, taking the time out, taking the day off to come and stand up for the right to protest. But nonetheless, you would expect with such a major piece of legislation, with such long-term ramifications for the right to protest, democracy, freedoms, liberties, rights, you would expect to see outroar. And I read an article in The Guardian yesterday that was circulated, which spoke about how this particular bill has had less press coverage than quality street chocolates, which I know it's nearly Christmas, but on a par of importance, this bill is something that is literally enabling the government to amass incredible powers over as a state and over its citizens and over legislation. And you know, historically, the right to protest has been so pivotal in creating so many positive social changes, impacting society in such a meaningful way. So this bill threatens that right, and it's really important at this latter stage that the Lords do the right thing. Now, the good thing, as I've mentioned earlier on today, is that the Lords have shown greater backbone and resolve in upholding democracy and the right to protest than the House of Commons. But it's kind of last chance hotel, so last chance saloon. So behind me now, walking past Westminster, I understand that there's a number of gatherings further down here. It's the main gatherings beginning at about 5 o'clock, I understand, but we're going to go track it down, see what's happening. Based upon the level of protest that we witnessed earlier in the year when the bill was first kind of publicised, where there was events all over the UK with vast numbers over multiple days, I was really anticipating a significant volume of people here today. But the streets are relatively quiet, which doesn't fill me with great confidence. So far, I think I've seen more police than I've seen protesters. But just down here, where to my left is the Tower Gardens Park. I believe this is where the original meeting point was going to be for the protest. The police have closed that now to obviously prevent protesters from entering into the park, but I also, having spoken to some locals, understand it always closes at night anyway. Poor choice of location. But let's have a look. I'm just going to go down to Abingdon Park here, where it's reportedly to be a small gathering of people down here, but it's desperately quiet. So perhaps the little shreds of democracy we have left are just going to erode and flitter through our fingers. But I can see a small gathering ahead of me now. Let's go check out what's going on. Seems to be more stewards than protesters at present. Let's have a little look-see. So this is a little strip of land here, Abingdon Park in London, where there are some protesters gathering. Let's take a look. Should have brought my light in today. So yeah, here we go. So yeah, here in the park there are a few. This is not a sizable demonstration as yet. We've got a small gathering of people behind me. I don't know if it's a silent protest, but it's very quiet here. It's not my preferred style. I like a festive atmosphere. Maybe it's a stand in silence. Stand in silence and stand silently and mourn the loss of the right to protest and democracy. Is that what this is? But really pleased to see at least there are some people here coming to stand up against the right to protest. But maybe I got the wrong end of the stick. Maybe it is a stand in the silence. It's very quiet here. But as you can see behind me, a very small gathering given the magnitude of the bill that we're facing. Very disappointing to see such a low turnout. But again, for those individuals who have taken the time out to be here, to stand up for the right to protest, to stand up for democracy, these very foundational elements. As we know through history, it's often the courageous few that stand up for the rights of the many. And it's really important we recognise that every individual action contributes, makes a difference. It's just we need to create a ripple effect now over the next series of readings to make sure that the rights are protected, because we live in a turbulent world, a tumultuous world, where there is many different issues around the world that need addressing, and often the political structures, the central organizations of the world are reluctant or hesitant or object to the types of changes that the people are demanding. So the right to protest enables people to make their voices heard where the official channels are unable to be used. So I can't think of a more important cause right now than to make sure this bill is amended, because without the right to protest, we all lose. We all lose. And I gave the analogy earlier on that sometimes protests can be a bit like fireworks night. If you've got pets or small children, then you might get a bit irritated over the firework night, etc. But it passes. It gets a bit quieter. But I do argue that if you've got kids and pets, it's never that quiet anyway. But your pets might get a bit upset and your children might get upset. But it's only for a little while, and it all passes. Some people have some fun. The same is true of protests. Protests can be disruptive. They can cause a nuisance. But by their very nature, they're designed to do that in order to raise a message, in order to get a clear voice, raise the amplification of the voice, because the official channels are not working. So really important that the right to protest is upheld, the right to peaceful protest, and this bill threatens that right. So again, here we are outside Westminster. You'll see it behind me. Very familiar sight. There's some drums now, so it isn't a silent protest. But yes, once again, the protest begins, so the gathering begins from 5 o'clock, so I appreciate I'm slightly early. But again, I was expecting to see thousands and thousands of people here, having seen the protests in Bristol earlier in the year. But it is early. Let's hope that more people join to make their voices heard. And if you're watching this at home, then please share this, because it's really important. I was talking to people on the train, I was talking to people on the streets of London, asking what their opinion was about the police bill. Many people aren't even aware of the police bill, full stop. Secondly, they're not aware of the amendments that are being thrown into, the mix. And thirdly, they're not aware of the right to protest is under threat. They're blissfully unaware of the massive power grab that this government is currently undertaking. Not just this government, by the way, but if you witness around the world, there's an index called the Democracy Index. In the last 2 years, we've seen the Democracy Index reach the lowest point since its inception. If that doesn't raise alarm bells, then I don't know what it takes. But we're kind of sleepwalking under the guise of a crisis into the situation where governments are using it to bolster their powers and remove the rights of the citizens. So my view is it's really important that if you can't attend a protest like this here today, you have to find a different way to make your voice heard, because like I said, if we lose the right to protest, we all lose. Because today you may see protesters arguing for a cause that you disagree with, but tomorrow there may be something that you need to stand up for. And if your right is not there to stand up for your rights, then we all lose. And we can all have different views and perspectives and beliefs around different causes and issues, but what we hold in common is the ability to make our voices heard at present, without infringement, without the threat of fines and jail time. Although I met with a protester earlier today who's in court for organising a protest during the pandemic, spoke about political policing. So there's already issues. I mean, we saw 2 arrests earlier today with someone with a megaphone. There's always challenges with protests, but this very bill provides ammunition for the government to strip that right away. So delighted to be here in London for this protest. I'm going to tune out for now, and I'll dial back in once things get going. But it's really hope that we see a bit more of a gathering, a bit more enthusiasm. I'll have to get myself involved and see if we can get a bit of fun and a bit of noise. To me, a good protest should feel like a festival atmosphere. It should feel vibrant. It should feel energetic. But maybe, I don't know. Maybe people are tired. People have been talking about protest fatigue. It's been like a year of protests, 2 years of protests. I think people are feeling the dip, but we can't lose motivation now. And for those who follow the channel, and for those of you who are concerned about the issues surrounding the pandemic, you'll see in England today, there may even be a press conference this evening or tomorrow about the government implementing Plan B. Within a week of pressing the fear button, amplifying the hysteria, now we're seeing potential Plan B being implemented, which means vaccine passports in England, which means work from home orders, further mandatory mask wearing, and various other potential conditions. And again, the large amount of scientists have come out in the last few days saying that it appears to be much more mild. Most symptoms are like a common cold. When Sajid Javid, the health secretary, was challenged on this in Parliament yesterday, he was asked how many people are seriously ill and hospitalised, and he couldn't answer the question. But Desmond Swain seemed to indicate that 0 have been hospitalised so far in the UK from this particular new variant. We also saw that in South Africa, they dumped in 17,000 cases, which were prehistoric cases from as early as April 2020. So that coincided. You saw this spike in South Africa, which coincided with the discovery of Omicron, which made it look like there was this huge steep uprise. And now already, the SAGE group are demanding lockdowns. They're suggesting upward of 1,000 people hospitalized per day, 90,000 cases per day. I don't know how many times we need to go on the merry-go-round of false modelling. I mean, if any other profession got their estimations wrong so many times by an order of magnitude, they would no longer be employed. Surely they'd be on some sort of performance management or fired. So there we have it. So again, in the context of these issues, these highly contentious issues, it's very important that we have the right to protest when government is overstepping, overreaching. I spoke to a number of people last week who said they feel like the government are in their household. They're intervening so heavily in private life that they feel like the government is literally in their home, and they have such limited choices because of government restrictions. Now, the right to protest gives us the opportunity to push back against that, and I'm sure we will witness a strong pushback if there is an announcement of Plan B tomorrow. If you've been following this week, you know we've been doing the Week of Action with the Together campaign, and as such, we've been campaigning MPs around the country to say no to vaccine passports, to say no to emergency legislation. And if you haven't followed that yet, please do check out the campaign and go to togetherdeclaration.org and find out all the details. And we continue to fight back against these draconian and irrational policies, mandates, and laws. So you can hear the drums behind me now. The gathering is growing. I will report back as things start to develop. The session was starting here at 5. So I'll come back to you once things really get going. There's some drums here, and again tonight you expect to see people from a whole range of causes tonight. We're going to be seeing groups that are campaigning for the climate, groups that are campaigning for animal rights, groups campaigning for women's rights, human rights, civil liberties, because of course all of the groups are affected. Every campaign group, every issue that could campaign for is affected by this bill. So expecting to see a whole range of groups here tonight. But yeah, you can hear the drums are playing. It's more like it. And hopefully it makes some noise and get our voices heard to make sure that we stand up for the right to protest and democracy here in the UK. So I'm just going to give you some footage of the drums, and then I'll be back with you shortly. Westminster, where the demonstration against the police bill is taking place, and again you'll see a multitude of groups here representing a variety of causes on the basis that the thing that unites us today is the right to protest, which, as I've mentioned in this broadcast, is a fundamental right of democracy. And this police bill, which is being debated by the House of Lords over a series of 3 sittings, puts that right at risk. And by putting that right at risk, puts all of us at risk. If this bill passes in its current form, we all lose. So tonight you'll see, regardless of your political beliefs on various different causes, you'll see a whole range of different groups here, all here today for the same reason, which is to say no to this police bill. And we can only hope that our voices are heard and that the House of Lords do the right thing. Now, with all of the things that we've witnessed in the last 2 years, where we've seen these great injustices, we have to remember we can't fall into the trap of the fear of permanence. It's something I've spoken about on the podcast a number of times, where let's suppose that this bill does go through without amendment. That is a devastating blow, but nonetheless the fight goes on. The opportunity to change those in power, the opportunity to remove the government, the current leaders. There's going to be a sweeping tide of change over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 months, 5 years, 10 years. I do believe we are at the precipice of a great wave of societal transformation and political transformation. And I believe what's occurred in the last 2 years, amongst all of the hypocrisy, the craziness, the madness, the injustices that have emerged, the abuses of civil liberties and human rights in the last 2 years, will result in levels of civil unrest that we have not witnessed for many decades. But that will create the conditions for a counterculture movement that starts to look at systemic change on a global scale. That pushback is beginning. We've seen it. The right to protest is an essential component of that change. But I do believe this is inspiring a wave of change. So regardless of what happens to that bill, the fight will go on in the same way that any new motion that gets put forth by this government, it's not over till it's over. And we are seeing more and more people. Well, so far today, it may be less people here than expected. It's only just begun. The park is filling up on this issue and many other issues. There are people who will not back down, and we're seeing around the world there's a level of dissatisfaction, a level of disenfranchisement with the current system, and it's time for us to see wide sweeping change. And I've said it many times before in this podcast that this is a pressure cooker, right? And the boiling frog is reaching boiling point, and people are starting to feel the heat. And when people start to feel the heat, it makes them very uncomfortable. And when people get uncomfortable, they begin to see that it's time for change. And the good thing is, within that discomfort, the greatest growth occurs. It's at the edge of our comfort zone that growth occurs, and it's where transformation is possible. And I truly believe, regardless of what it happens here now and the forthcoming days, change is coming. Change is coming, and we are leading that change. We'll be part of that change, and it's really, really important to buckle up and get ready to enjoy the ride, because it's going to come with challenges. Of course, we know that, but this is the beginning of a wide sweeping movement of movements that is going to lead to wide sweeping change. I know this. I can feel it. You can see it in every corner. The world is beginning to wake up. People are rising up, and there is real hope. So I'm going to tune out for now. I've got a couple of calls to make. I'm just going to tune in with a couple of people who are meant to be meeting here, and I'll join you again with some footage as this event unfolds. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the share button. It's really important we take a stand to preserve the right to protest. See you in a while.